Hello, my name is Alvin. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm with Nigel and Stefan, the identical twins who live in Reefton. The twins were born on the 4th of January 1949 and have resided in Reefton for 72 years. In the interview we chat about their childhood memories, reflecting on how it was for them as twins in an authoritarian education system during their childhood and through to teenage years. They elaborate on their reaction to corporal punishment in schools and how that hindered their desire to remain as peers in a close brotherly bond. Until 1990, teachers and prefects had the right to what the law called reasonable force to discipline students. Females received lesser punishments of the leather strap. Might was right in the mantra. During the move to abolish corporal punishment, researchers analysed school punishment books. The same kids kept getting caned repeatedly. We chat about their work history and exploring their vast local knowledge. The twins talk about their travel to Scotland to find their family roots using DNA research information. I've broken this interview into 3 parts. I hope you enjoy the twins' story. Good morning, boys. It's lovely to meet up with you again. Hey? Whenever I come past here, I like to just have a catch up with you and see what's happening in your life. And thank you for going over this little bit of interview about our early life here in Reefton. I can remember vividly going off to school at age 5, but have you got any earlier memories of being a young fella, you two, before school, preschool?
Yeah, we started school at 4.5,
Did you?
because Mum had 4 of us under 5, and it took the pressure off Mum,
Yes, yeah.
us going to school. And our first day at school, and Mrs. Patterson, but we all called her Miss Patterson or Paddy Wag,
Yes.
and we went to go to school there, and she said, "Come in, I don't know where I'm going to sit you, but for the present, sit here today, and then we'll sort you out." So we sat there all through Smoko and went home for crib and came back and sat there all that time till the end of class, and went home and told Mum that Mrs. Patterson's a liar. We sat there all day, and she said, "Sit there for the present," and we didn't get no present.
Good. So that's one of your first memories on your first day at school. Yeah.
We always had an N and S on our forehead.
She put it there or you did?
The teachers did, but we always, at different stages of your life, you grow to look alike. Other times you don't.
Yeah.
And during those periods, they didn't know who we were.
No.
I think we didn't either half the time.
No,
But,
it's true.
and we just swapped them and put another initial there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the clothes that you wore as kids there was a little uniform we had to have, wasn't there?
Yeah, we had cut down clothes, and at that stage we didn't have a lot of money, and old Tonga Blacker lived across the road. We lived in Munson Street at the time,
Yes.
and Tonga used to give Mum his pink underwear.
Flannels, yeah.
What do you call them? Yeah, the old flannels.
Yes.
And Mum would cut them down for singlets, and that would have a cut down shirt or something, and pants that were either too big,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we had to grow into them.
That's right.
Shoes,
Well, we
didn't
never
have
really wore
shoes.
bare feet
Mhm.
most of the time
We
until
never,
we got to high school, but we were mainly in bare feet. We
Yeah.
lost a lot of big toenails, you know.
and coming, we'd been in school a few weeks, and we wandered up to the shops, which were across the road then, as far as our world went then.
Yes.
And we're coming back, and there was a whole line of bikies. They were called bodgies and wedgies in them days.
Yes.
And they were parked along the school side of Pottery Street, and we walked past, and I don't know what we said to them, but it was obviously something they didn't like, and they chased us. And in behind the girls' toilets in that primary school block, there was a stand where the rubbish was put into 44-gallon drums, and
Yes.
the council would back in and shove it on their truck. Well, these bodgies chased Steph and me and caught us, and shoved us head first down into a drum each of the 2 drums and left us there with their feet sticking out.
Oh.
And we were there till they left,
Yes.
and then we wriggled and jiggled and wriggled and jiggled till the drums fell off and landed on the ground, and then we backed out of them, and we were stinking with the bloody milk bottle tops, the cardboard ones, and apple cores and sandwiches and all that. So we had quite an aroma with us when we got home that day.
What a terrible thing to do to a couple of little kids. What age would you have been then?
We'd have been 5 to 6,
Yeah.
somewhere there.
Wow, distinct memory, wasn't it? Eh?
Yeah.
So you said Munson Street, and then you moved down to Chattockville. You were down there from when I knew you, really?
Yeah,
about age 12.
Shattuckville, we were 9 when we went
Oh, yeah?
to Shattuckville, 1949.
Yeah.
1958, we
Mm.
shifted down there.
Yeah, because that was a much bigger house as your family got bigger too, didn't it?
Yeah, that was a big old house, and it belonged to Bangs before us.
Yeah.
And it had a shop in one big room. Bangs run the shop.
Oh yes.
But before Bangs, it was a farmhouse for Dr. Conlon.
Oh yes.
So
Yeah.
it was a big old show.
So Conlon Street and all that down there. That's
Yes.
roughly where he had his farm down that area, wasn't
His
it?
farm went right through to the Whitehoo.
Yes.
And even right over, Watts's farm out at the
Oh, he had
Rodegoo was all Conlon's.
He had the whole lot. Yeah. Okay.
And, so we were down there, but we were in Munson Street, and the winters are pretty hard down on there.
Took a bit of heating, eh?
Well, we actually heated the neighbourhood up there a couple of times because the next door neighbour was a chap called Nat Collins, and he kept chooks.
Yes.
And we flogged his eggs, you see, always hungry. And it was dark in there, and so he replaced the eggs with China eggs, thinking the chooks were eating them.
I see.
But we couldn't bust them open. And anyway, our brother Chris at that stage, but later on, we were pretty good with matches, and he set the blackies up and set Nat Collins' chook house on fire. So I can't remember who put it out because we weren't in view at that stage.
No, you hightailed it out.
Yeah.
So as identical twins, you've got special links with one another. You know, you talk about feeling one another's pain and emotions and all those sort of things, don't you?
Yeah, well, we noticed that more when we got older. When we got cut at work or something, and one would feel that,
Yes.
tell you exactly where his mate was cut.
But as identical twins going through the school stuff, like arithmetic and spelling and those sort of things, you were both equally able to do it, no trouble?
Yeah.
How did you judge it with your exams and things like that? Did your results come out about the same?
Well, exactly, but that later on in high school,
Yes.
when we did school cert and all that stuff, and we got the exact same marks, which the subjects were marked all around New Zealand by different teachers. And we got the same marks, so teachers put us into a classroom, and one of us at the back one at the front, and a heap of teachers down the side, and they gave us a test.
Yes.
And we got word for word answers, and they called us cheats and liars and all sorts. I don't know how, but
You had bloody mental telepathy. You knew what the other one was going to say.
Put you back a bit because their policy was always to split twins up.
Yes.
And they did that in high school. They split you up, put you in another class, and we always acted the arse till they put us back in the same one.
Yeah.
We caused quite a bit of trouble.
Good on you. Yeah. No, you want it. So
Primary school teachers with Peter Bain,
yes,
who went to the Antarctic and also climbed Everest, and he used to show us his string singlet with the more string and sort of holes, and he wore different layers that trapped the heat and all that, and then later on we had Miss Bell, who was and Mrs. McAwee.
Yes.
And I got the cuts off Mrs. McAwee because there was a bloody typo or something was crawling around on her son. He was in our class, Bede McAwee, and there was one on his shoulder, and I said to his mother, there's an insect on Bede's shoulder, and she turned around and walloped me. She thought I was making it up. Yeah. So
Phil McAwee was her name, wasn't it?
Yeah,
She broke quite a few 3-foot rules over us, didn't she?
And then so we did a lot of bunking school from then on,
Did you?
and 3 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And we used to go across the road to where Keith Hepburn is now, and an old chap, Pettigrew, lived there.
Yes.
And he had horse stables, so we hung around in there because
Yeah.
we could hear the school bell and knew when to go home.
Yeah. So what things did you both really enjoy at school in the way of geography and things like that? Like you're well versed in it now, but did you pick up those traits when you were young fellas?
Not really. No, we were average
they
or below
must have-
average at school.
Yeah, they must have thought we were going to be good labourers because we got all the labouring jobs. Like in the winter, we'd get hot cocoa at the big hall.
Yes.
Nars and me go across to Jack Gibbo's and get the cocoa and the bloody sugar, and we'd boil a big bloody zip or whatever it was, and we'd supply the whole class. And then we were the ink monitors. We used to make the ink out of powder
Yes.
and
water.
water and go around and fill all the bloody ink rolls in the desks. And then we were the
Milk
milk
bottle.
monitors. We'd
Yeah.
give out the milk, and then we'd wash all the crates. They had a proper little machine next to the caretakers in there. And old Stan Newcomb, he was a good caretaker. His old Briggs and Stratton lawnmower in the summer just seemed to be like drying all day. He'd be going, and then he'd be raking up the grass all by hand.
Yes.
They don't make workers like him nowadays.
Then we
But
got,
what you're saying there is the teachers sort of stereotyped you, did they? Like
Yes, they must have thought we were a couple of bloody just
well, he come to school to warm the seats up.
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
and we
yeah.
were troublemakers. We were smart ass
Yeah.
kids.
And you could defend yourself verbally and things like that, you know?
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
liked the physical sides of Barbador, playing them games.
Yes, yeah.
What they call it now, bull rush or something.
Yes.
yeah.
Bar the door it was called, and we were good at that. And then some of
Rugby,
the other some were
tackling.
good at rugby, and we
Yeah.
one of the
Size didn't worry us.
no, he tackled Peter Bain, the school teacher, so
Yes.
he kicked the ball in Steph's face
Yeah.
for doing that.
Yeah.
We used to have the job of mowing across the road where the woodwork block was. and
Yes.
the girls cooking, and we had the old push mowers.
No, I see.
And I don't know whether they paid mum for it or what, I don't know, but Steve and me mowed it
Yeah.
and mowed Bill Gordon's lawn, quite a lot of mowing.
Yes.
And then we
So
had
this is still before you got to high school?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and we had Basher Ewbury
Yeah.
as a teacher. He was well named, had a short fuse. And one day he was giving us a talk, we were in Form 2 then, on the
Stanley Graham.
Oh, yes.
And we thought he must have been a friend, and he asked us at the end of his talk, or any say something about it, and I put my hand up. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Please, sir, the bastard must have been mad."
Yeah.
So he come across with a 3-foot ruler, and I had my hands on the desk, and he went smash. But I pulled my hands back,
Yeah.
and he was that wild. He went purple, and he blew his top and bottom teeth out onto the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you stated an obvious,
Yeah.
and he didn't like that. eh?
Yeah, I don't know. We thought he must have been a friend, but we're talking to
Yeah.
another teacher, and they said, no, he didn't know that chap.
Yeah.
But-
But the audacity of you to have a counter opinion,
Yeah,
he just flared, eh?
he
Yeah.
fled, all right, yeah.
Oh, we had the headmaster there too, old bloody Fritz Bulltrop.
Yes.
And old Fritz, and we had a nasty little teacher by the name of Colin Aldrich. He was a woodwork teacher.
Yes.
He wasn't a bad teacher, but we didn't get on with him. And he went across and he made all this shit up to old headmaster. He had 2 pages of it, all bullshit. And he was there for about half an hour telling old Fritz all about us. And then Fritz sent him out and got Narge and me to come over. And he read us this big list of shit. And when he got to the end of it, we said, "There's nothing but effing bullshit."
Yes.
Well, he didn't like us swearing, the
Yes.
F word. And he jumped up, he tore the desk just about clean off its bloody legs, and told us to, in no uncertain terms, to get out of it. And of course, we go over to Jack's Bush then, and Patterson Bush, named after the lawyers. And
We spent a bit of
spent
time over there then.
wagging then.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
no,
And they couldn't round you up, hey, because you didn't want to go back there, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned quite a few special teachers there. You know, there's some you did get on with, but some of them they just.
John Burns.
John Burns was good.
Yeah.
He was good. He'd read stories, Huckleberry Finn and all
Yes.
them. You can still remember them. Just
That's
as
right,
he read
because
them.
and you look forward to those times in class. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Tilly Bell, she was
Tilly
over in the Alexander.
What we were in a room called
Yeah.
the Alexander Room.
Was
Was
shifted from down the
from
Alec.
the gold claim down the Alec.
Mm.
And we were there, and we were there one day, and there was a possum up a silver birch tree.
Mhm.
And you may remember a chap by the name of Rex Fattorini.
Yeah, I do.
And Rex he was a school kid then, but he come back with a 22 and he shot it in front of all us kids
Right.
up the tree, so it's something you remember.
Yeah.
And poor Rex ended up getting shot up on the butts by Rob
Rob
Riley.
Riley.
Yeah, he copped a bullet in the back, didn't he?
When we were here,
Mm.
our class put in for sports gear. We all just to one class, and we paid for softball bats, footballs, girls basketballs, bloody things like that. And Najmi got the job of looking after all the leather gear, rubbing mutton fat on it, and keeping an eye on all the gear. And when we went to go to high school, they said, "Oh, you're not taking that. That's got to stay in standard 6." We said, "No, it doesn't. We paid for it. It goes with us." Of course. Najmi never took a backward step, so we rounded it all up, and we took it there. And when they tried to ask us for sports fees at high school, we said no, because we bought our own gear.
Yes.
And they said, no, if you don't bloody pay sports fees, you're not getting a leaving certificate. So that was it. But we never did.
Vindictive lot, weren't they?
Yeah, they
Stuck
could be.
to it.
They held the reins of power, I suppose, didn't they?
Yes, they didn't like rebellious kids, eh?
No.
We pushed them to their limits, so.
You did. There were some punishments as such, you know, like they're trying to knock you into shape and things. What was happening around that with you fellas?
Well, in high school mainly, there'd be a lot of fighting between the Protestants and the Catholic kids.
Yes.
Because there's a bit of a friction between the two, because a lot of their fathers never went to war and managed to work in the mines and taxis and all that, and they made a lot of money.
Yes.
And those kids could always go on the school trips and had the best bikes, and the parents had the cars, whereas we had nothing. And so there was quite a bit of animosity there, and also their priest fella would also stir up a lot, and against rugby team, but there'd be a bit of fighting going on between classes, and we always got caught, and we always ended up having to go and get the cuts, and not till years later we found out that the Catholic boys never got the strap. And one of the teachers, Paul Etheridge, he was a violent sort of a fella, and he would whack you. He'd whack you from either the hand to the shoulder. It didn't matter where, he just welts the whole way. And we'd grab hold of it at the last one and pull him on his nose, and that made him worse. He used to go right off, so we ended up getting the cuts, I think, just about every day.
And then that teacher, that woodwork teacher, he wouldn't let us. We're good enough to play for the first 15, only little runs, and so he made us play for the second 15 against his highly trained first 15.
Yes.
So we just flattened Najmi, and he said, "Can't you stop them effing McKays?" They said, "You come in and have a go."
Yeah.
So he stepped in, and it just happened to be a line out, and the ball was thrown in, but to this day we don't know where it went, because he marked us, and just outside him there's a big waller hole, big shit hole full of mud. He had his suit and all on.
Harris tweed jacket.
Yeah, and so we just downed him in it and rolled him over, and all you could see is a set of eyes coming up out of the mud, and he said, "Kill them effing McKays."
So you two didn't even have to say what you were going to do to each other. You knew
we
that
just
shit was
flattened him, But then one day we were playing softball, and for some reason we used a cricket bat instead of a softball bat, you know. And you weren't batting. No, I wasn't batting. And you were out in that long line, so we were waiting to have a bat, and my hand flew off, the bat flew out, and it went all the way along the line and hit Nigel, because he thought it was a great joke.
Yes.
So I
Teachers thought it was a great joke.
Yeah, so I says to Nigel, smash his bloody bat then.
So the bat flew through the air and hit your brother?
Yeah, and he thought it was a great joke.
Yeah.
Teachers.
So I said to Nigel, smash his bloody bat then. So picked it up and hit it on the ground hard, and it split in two. So he just pulled it in two bits and chucked it at him, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
And then we had to go in the woodwork class. He was still had a set against us, so he said to us, there was 18 in the class, and he said, I want Nudge and me to cut 18 pieces of timber, exact length, width, I don't know what it was now. And so we did. We cut the exact 18, and he come along and he said, you've only cut, we said, no, we haven't, we're not that bloody dumb. And he said, yes, you've cut it. He tried to make us liars. And anyway, Bruce Cutbush, poor bastard's dead just now, he come up and he said he's swiped those bits of board now in his office. So no, to me that was it. We were in his office. We actually found the boards in there quite easy.
Yes.
But that didn't stop us. We absolutely smashed everything in there. And then we come out with all these 18, got them all together, and we said, if you don't apologise to us in front of the whole class, we're going to smash every board over your head.
So they apologised.
Yeah.
You know, they don't vote you from then on in.
No, you
So when we used to go on school trips, we couldn't go on any in the primary school, but he'd take us in his little V-dub, and he'd take us out to bloody cement works, Westport. So we'd pull his handbrake on in the wee V-dub that was between the seats, and put a jersey or something on it, and we'd only put it on a few notches, and it would be working a stripe out of all the way to Westport. And he had a hat there, and so we'd empty the bloody cigarette ashtray, and while he's driving, fill his hat up, bloody old butts and things, and then we'd get home, and he'd drop us off, and he had before that he had an old Bradford, and so we used to take the hubcaps off and fill them up with stones, and then he'd rattle down there and lose his hubcaps, and the rocks would go and throw his hubcaps off somewhere, and then if he got that right, then we'd spud up the bloody exhaust and jammed it in. He couldn't start it, there was too much back pressure, and then failing that, you lift the bonnet and put a pencil line down from the top of the plug down to the big wet earth into the head, and run the spark in there, and he couldn't work out what was going on. And
You're into sabotage.
And then Finn McGee, he was another teacher, and he had a little Austin 7, had bumpers on it, so he managed to lift that bastard up onto the school veranda and jam it sideways in.
Us and a few others.
Yeah, and then the next day, I don't know how he got out. Next day he comes along and he said, if anyone can lift his little car up there, they can have it. Well, he'd taken the front and back bumpers off the bloody thing.
Oh, you couldn't get a good grip of
Couldn't
it.
get a good grip, no. So that was the high school days, but the primary
School, we used to go across to Gibellini's and get weighed to play rugby. They had the old scales weighing wheat bags.
In the back room there.
Yeah.
And would always drink as much water as we could and fill the pockets up with stones to be heavier for some reason. But, you could play with the bigger fellas then. But, and also right on the corner next to Miss Patterson's room, do you remember an old house here, Miss Wade's,
Yes.
Mrs. Wade? And I think she was the wife of a headmaster of the way back in the days, Jacob Wade, and they're both buried out there. Well, we used to walk past her place, back and forward, and quite a number of times she'd be leaning over the gate, asleep, and with a whiskery chin and a gob open. And one day we ventured a timid g'day to her, and she opened her eyes and clamped the gob shut and took off for the sanctuary of that bloody back door, and it dark.
Yes.
And that was all right. And we come along one day, and she was under the big marker carpet tree getting coal, filling a bucket up with coal from the heap under that. And an aeroplane droned over town, and she come running out. She's agitated. She's looking up and down. She's wringing her hands in her apron. She said, "Is that ours? Is that ours?" And of course, it wasn't Stephen mine. We didn't know whose it was. And we just give her a shrug. And then this happened a couple of times, and we'd been reading at school in them days. That was early in the primers when we must have been 6 or something. We'd been reading about ducks lucks and fox locks and goose loose and the sky falling in on chicken licking.
Yes.
So every time she'd step out in the trees and look up, and we would too, we thought must have been going to be some loose bits fall down. But another aeroplane drone past, and she said, "Is that Bob? Is that Bob?" We didn't know who Bob was, so we just nodded anyway. She said, "That's good, that's good, stay there," and she'd run into the house and come out with a sixpence for us.
Oh, yes.
And this went on for quite a while. Every time there was an aeroplane went over, Steph and me would run in, and we had phenomenal eyesight.
Yes.
After that, for sixpence, we could see Bob and every plane going over. So we'd run in, she'd give us sixpence, we'd go and spend it across at Timmy White's. And we were in there one day, and old Mrs. McKay came in, and we were stuffing lollies into our gobs, and she came in, she said to Tim, "Is it their birthday or something?" And Tim said, "If it is, it's the 4th I've had this month." And
He said that family
And
hadn't
she
got
said-
money to squander.
yeah, that family, Tim hadn't got money to squander anyway. She got her bloody pies and paid for them and went out, and we were pleased we hadn't told her where we got the money from. But
So that old lady, Mrs. Wade, she must have been traumatised by a war event over in Europe or something, eh?
I think her son
lost
went
her son.
missing in the skies over
Yes.
Europe, from what we can gather.
Yes.
And anyway,
And she lived there on her own, and the social supports wouldn't have been in place for someone like that, you know.
no.
She could have been unwell, all those sort of things come into
So
it,
she
don't
had
they?
no visitors, and I suppose our little game livened up her life. And then our sister and mum said they can remember going to visit her and probably taking some of that money back again, those sixpences back to her. But when she died, the house got pushed into a heap, and Crooks Brothers cut the big marker carpet down and turned it into wood for our woodwork class.
Yes.
And Steve made a nice little bloody coffee table, and we could look at that and always remember our friend Mrs. Wade and the sixpences.
Nice old lady, hey?
Yeah.
Well, let's turn our mind now to your first jobs after leaving school, and you know, from high school. Where did you two fellas crack on then?
We went and worked for people called Modern Builders and built helped build the mill out the road there
Oh yes.
for H.W. Smith.
Yes.
And we worked for
Actually-
Modern Builders, and we were doing the concrete work straight from school
Yes.
to 11 and a half hour days,
Yes.
shoveling gravel and lifting cement bags. And we had a big mixer that you could pull endless barrel loads into, and then pull a lever, and she lifted her up and put her into the hopper. For all that shoveling in that heat in summer, and our muscles were starting to get stiff. We would put them in the water to cool off, and they had cement in the water, and we thought we were setting the concrete. We didn't realise it was just we never used it. We never had muscles.
So this is you're 15 and 16 years of age now. Hey, but you'll be strong boys too, though.
Well, we'd done a heck of a lot of
Farm work.
farm work, lifting bales for farmers, and also going up onto the butts with
Yes.
sleighs, and had a sleigh track, cutting manuka
Yes.
for pea sticks for gardeners, and we'd sell them for half a crown for 25 a bundle,
Yes.
and bring them, sold them before we got to Buller Road.
Yes.
So,
So how long did that job as a carpenter's out there at the mill go? You moved on from the mill?
yeah, we went to the forestry
Forestry.
then, and for a year till they got the mill up and running, we went back to the mill after a year for 6 weeks, I think, but they underpaid everybody, so we left.
Yes.
Went back onto the forestry and ended up doing 21 years for the forestry.
21 years. Eh? So what's the career structure on the forestry? Like you work from...
Labourer
Yes.
to forest labourer to
forestry and 2 to
forestry and 2, forestry and 1 to leading hand.
Yes.
You can go up gradually.
So you both progressed equally right up to
yes,
leading
but
hands, yeah?
we had to fight every bloody rise that we got.
Yes.
They wouldn't give it to us.
So you wait for some old fella to move off the perch and then you move in? Is
It was good too, working with the older fellas, because they would smoke, they'd sit down and they'd talk about
Yes.
Reefton and their days
times.
and their times, and it was good.
Yeah.
And we
learned.
were interested in that, so we retained all the knowledge they told us.
Yes. So what are the forests? What's the range that from the Reefton area? How far afield did you travel in the Forest Service?
We only went down as far as Total Flat, and then Total Flat took over that way, and we went through to the Marraware at stages, over the Percy, Larry's, all those sort of handy
We
places.
were run by Nelson then.
But mainly within a 30-mile radius of Reefton,
Yes.
and that was planting exotics and also measuring native trees for the sawmills that were still going,
Yes.
and cutting mine props. We'd cut a lot of mine props for the mines that were going to.
Right.
A lot of logging. We did self-taught surveys.
Yes.
We surveyed all the section boundaries between Boatman's Road and the Iron Bridge.
Did you?
16 by 32 section between state forest and private. And then we did
That was part of your role in the forestry, was it?
Yeah.
And you picked up those skills?
Your dad had done a fair bit of surveying, and we used to tag along with him in the weekends and
survey blocks.
surveying private stuff, and we pretty well, and it was good. We picked it up easy.
So then that allowed people to cut timber within those blocks with clear demarcation.
Oh yeah.
That's what because you
You
don't.
got your boundaries and then
Yeah.
you measure them all.
Yes.
We went through, and then they paid royalty on the timber
Yes.
to the Forest Service.
Now I remember a story you told me about the big Rimu out there at the landing somewhere. He's still standing today, and he's one of the biggest ones that yous have come across.
He's
Yeah,
up
well,
in
we've had a
place.
look at the one at
Marraware.
and it's not as big as the one we come across.
Yes.
The one we come across is in an area way up towards an Angua Junction up on the left in a place called Kennedy's Basin.
Yes.
It's all limestone and that, and it's a
Yes.
massive tree there. And how many of us? Five of us put our hands outstretched, and we only got to halfway.
Yeah, so he's a big tree then.
Big
isn't he?
tree. He must stand out in
Yes.
the canopy if you flew over.
But you can't get to him easy. You have to be. She's tiger country in there, huh?
It's
Oh.
real tiger country, stinging nettle and tomos and
Yes.
holes going down.
When we're logging, you and me were supplying 4 sawmills in the indigenous, and we did run into a big patch of big mero, and they're the last of the big mero.
Yes.
So the forestry got John Johns, a forestry photographer, to come and photo them, while we chopped them down. And we had a husk varnish then, I think.
Yeah.
And the bloody things used to get hot, and then pop, and they'd run in reverse and throw the saw back out the bloody scarf, or back cut, whatever they were in. So we had to get the man from Sweden out, and he checked them over, and he said, "Oh no, 2-foot tree's a big tree in Sweden."
Yes.
Yeah, they're just overheating in there.
Overheating and all that timber.
Yeah.
You'd have to show it.
Down Crampton Road there's that big complex we know as the forestry compound, but do you know the history of it?
Yeah, it was built earlier on for the coal miners. They imported a whole lot of miners in 1951, and then the ranger trainees got involved, woodsmen and ranger trainees, because before that the forestry was up in the courthouse, and they never had many wagons. I think Dad had an old Air Force bike, a push bike, with the blue, grey mudguards with the red and white and blue inside on the back, and they had a rubber raft for crossing the Anangahua doing timber cruising and that, and then they shifted from there down to the forestry
It
camp.
wasn't long lived as a miners' block. They brought in the likes of Andy Reid and different ones from overseas to work the coal mines, but it didn't last that long. They married local girls and wasn't enough to put in. That was a single man's quarters.
Yes.
And then the forestry took over, and they had woodsmen there for a start, staying there, but there wasn't many. So they ended up with as a ranger school. And young fellas from all around New Zealand came there, and they'd have an instructor and teach them, and they go out in the bush on their wagons and learn about native and exotics and all that carry on.
Because there's an arboretum across the railway lines there where Jimmy Lawns was, you know. There's a bit of a workshop there, and then all those trees were exotic trees, weren't they?
And why that was because our father, Ray McKay, came across from Hamner. He'd been down to Pottery on a course, come back, and he came to Reefton in 1947 to start up the exotics, and they were the ones that put that arboretum in Jimmy Lawns' farm there, the Lawns farm,
Because Dad's father managed Hamner and Balmoral.
Right.
When it was prison labour. Yeah, we got all the
So,
early records here.
So that was the forestry compound, and because they were young fellas, they never had, they couldn't fend for themselves, so they had a cookhouse, and they got their meals there.
Yes.
Because I know later on when we had our labouring gang, we were the poor peasants, and they were the elite, the fellas, and they all had regulation size lunch paper in their cribs, and we'd be out of town working in some of the blocks around there pruning, and the ranger trainees would be in the next block, and they would leave one hell of a mess on the skids where you park your truck of all these food wrappers and that, and our gang got the blame. But Dad was pretty smart, and he looked at him and said, they're not from our gang, they're regulation bloody cut papers. And they had to end up going back and picking all their papers up.
So the dirty bastards tried to make out that we left a lot of
Coat hangers,
you know,
when you
prune
prune
the
it.
branch off a tree.
Yeah.
So they had they cut a whole big bag and took them in and said, this is our stuff. Well, we had the best tended blocks
Yes.
in the Nangahua and probably further afield too.
They were just trying to get their own back. They didn't cut any stubs off our trees. They just cut branches into bits and said that's what they'd cut off.
Yes.
So there was a bit of shit between them, and which carried on into the rugby.
Yes.
So when the trainees played rugby against the local team, there was a lot of friction, a lot of fights and that lot too.
Yeah.
A lot of good competition.
Good competition and animosity, scores settled down.
Yeah.
So after the Forest Service all scaled down, where did you boys carry on your employment then?
Well, we were told a year before the forestry was going to fold in 1986, but in 1985 they told us we were only going to get a certain percentage of our year's wages as redundancy. And so we thought, bugger that, we're not going to spend another year and everybody be looking for a job in Reefton. So we got out a bit earlier, a year earlier, and started work with the council.
Yes.
And we were on there for 13 years on the roading guild.
Till that folded up.
We got amalgamated with Westport, and they had no dough, so they wanted to run up from Westport, so they got rid of our roading gang.
But that was a good move for you. You enjoyed that road
Oh
work?
yeah, it was a good move. Yeah.
And so you're up as far as the Rahu, down as far as
Buller Gorge, Lower Buller Gorge, Meadows Road.
yes,
Out to the Big Grey at Ikamatua, up to the
New Creek at the Lyle.
New Creek at the Lyle, out through there, up to so far up to
Shenandoah
to Boundary Road, and up to Hunters Road in the Lewis Pass. So it was a big area, and down Hukariri, Snowy,
and you got good machinery that you got familiar with and the way you went?
Well, Steph had been driving a grader for the forestry for a number of years, so we had an old sibling sort of a grader.
Ivan Barford,
And I had to learn how to drive a loader. We had been driving an old tractor loader on the forestry, but driving a proper loader took a little bit of getting used to, and then diggers. And
when that folded up, contractors would come and get us to work for them. 3 of them would arrive here at 6 in the morning.
Yes.
And so we had a couple of days for you here and there, but
machinery wise, farm wise, all that sort of stuff. You made yourself available.
Yeah.
And what age were you then?
Well, we retired when we were 50.
Yes, yeah.
Because during all these times we were shooting a lot of deer and pigs
Yes,
and not drinking, so we were banking it all.
yes,
So we had enough money.
yeah. So you didn't need to have a job and
No.
really?
One of the very first jokers we actually worked in the school holidays before we went out and built the mill was for Frank Taylor, and he was surveying the Dauntless coal mine underground, and we were too young to go underground, so he'd get us, because we're good with slashes, and surveying it, and we would survey on top of the ground out at Bloody Gannon's Road and head towards Morris's mine. They knew where they were going, and right at the last of our working days we were doing a job up the Island Block, and Nigel and me knowing an awful lot about surveying, and he's a surveyor, Frank Taylor, and we got the job opening an old survey line. We didn't have any plans or bloody compass bearings, anything, but we'd done that much of it.
Yes.
We knew where it should go, so we found every pair.
Yes.
They couldn't get over that, I don't think. And then we actually surveyed a few lines up, and Chris Cole from Westbrook come up, and he said, "Nah, they're using all this bloody GPS stuff, and we're just probably more accurate than him."
That's right.
You did it the old way, Abney level,
Yes.
pickets and chain measure and all that stuff.
Corn pig, cutting all them and scribing.
No, so we started off with our life with old Frank, who's dead now, and
Ended it with
ended it virtually with him, the last job, doing a bit of surveying. And his granddaughter is the head distiller
Oh, yes.
does the gin at the distillery down
Lovely.
here. Yeah.
And catching up with your McKay family over there, you know.
Well, we didn't catch up with any family over there,
Did you?
but we didn't know them, but we caught up with a lot of people that because we're getting our DNA done and got it done,
Yes.
we found that are related to us through the DNA,
Yes.
and we met a lot of them.
Yes. So what part of Scotland did you visit?
We're north of Inverness, right through to the top coast, and down the west side and east side,
Yes.
right through.
And you're familiar with the outdoors, so it would be just lovely up there for you to go and have a look around, wouldn't it?
Absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
We could have stayed there. Forgot about Reefton.
Yes.
We fenced both sides of a road for a chap called Robert McKay,
Yes.
who we find out now is related to us.
Yes.
And how we know that is because across the road there's a lady called Kim Anderson who was Kim McKay, and she doing our DNA, and she put hers up on the GED match
Yes.
and found we're related.
It's bloody
And
marvellous, the
anyway,
DNA, isn't it?
And she was telling us that her ancestors lived up this road in Rogart,
We probably wouldn't know it or heard of it.
and she said you won't know it or hear of it. It's a place called Rimuzag or Remuzag. They just call it Rimuzag. We said we do know it. We fenced both sides. One side for Robert, one side for John McDonald. And she said, well, her ancestors come from just up past there. We're talking to Robert McKay, and he said, see that heap of stones up there? He said, that's where her ancestors' house was.
Isn't it marvellous how you get a link like that? Isn't it?
So we enjoyed it.
And then everyone we made contact with up there, either digging peat or fencing or shearing, or even going down to the Edinburgh Royal Show, and the bus driver, we found out Alec Campbell, related to him. We dug peats for the Grant family. We're related to the Grants, and all things just turned out that way. Yeah. So everyone we knew up there was who we were related to.
Lovely. What other countries did you travel to?
That was it.
Scotland was your interest, and that's where you had your family ties and things? And
Yep, so we're still trying to work out exactly where they came from. We know they got married in Glasgow,
Yes.
as far back as we can go. And
So-
that's about it. We know that they were through Rogart where we met all these people as well, but we want to find the connection between Rogart and there we've got round the DNA to there.
Yes.
We've been to there. We've just got a little bit in the middle to
Yes, that's all.
do up. Yeah,
It's just a fabulous bit of science, isn't it, to be
Yeah.
able to find that? And
yeah.
yeah,
We go back on our mother's side, the Norwegian side, through to the Olsen, so we're probably related to you.
yes. So it's not easy to find them, but the DNA is exactly who they are, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
it's so
totally.
accurate. We
Man.
didn't know when we went to the Isle of Skye and we went to the Talisker distillery.
Mm,
Just up the road a couple of miles is where our great grandmother came from.
yes.
She
Oh,
was
Mary
Cameron.
Cameron, and she came from Brickendale.
Mm.
Yeah. We had to bloody leg it up the road and we had to find out where she was.
Now, how did you find travelling Reeftonian boys here, not world travelled? You lobbed into Heathrow and you seen the size of it, I suppose, did you?
No, we went straight to Glasgow, Paisley,
Oh,
Glasgow.
yes.
Straight from here to Sydney to Dubai to Paisley and Glasgow, and then
Yeah.
we went north on the little train. Very easy to travel around the world.
Yes.
Straightforward. People would follow us
Yes.
in all the queues because it just seemed so easy.
Yes.
Yeah,
And you had the reassurance of your twin there to bloody back you up. But
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, we found it real easy to travel.
Yes.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you went back a couple of times, I
Yeah,
understand.
we went back. We stayed nearly 3 months the first time,
Mm.
and a month we took our brother Christopher back and
Yes.
stayed there a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, we went to the Orkney Islands. And, yeah, all over the show.
My wife worked there for 9 months on the Orkney at Kirkwall there as a midwife. Yeah.
Oh, gee,
Yeah.
And
gee.
We went from Gills Bay to St Margaret's Hope and then we went to
Up to
Kirkwall
Well, yeah.
and all in there.
and the Stones of Stennis and Maze Howe and
Yes,
Skara Brae, all that sort of
Yes.
stuff. Wasn't it a bomb sight to see all that, you know, just
Yeah.
like Reefton, we've got a silver pine post in the corner there, and that's our history, isn't it?
Yeah.
But over there to go back there and see Skara Brae where those fellas lived
Yeah.
4,000 years ago. You know?
Yeah, all stone where the beds were, stone walls. Yeah. Covered in with sand for centuries, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And to go into that big tomb there where you crawl down that little tunnel and see how they got the light right to the back wall.
Yeah, yeah. In the middle of summer.
Yes.
Yes, you go right to the back wall. Yeah,
Unreal, isn't it?
yeah. Great.
No, it's lovely to travel, and no doubt you still link in with people too, do you? With writing to them back there?
7 still keeping contact from
Yes.
Scotland all the time.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by telephone.
Yes.
Yeah,
You've got to talk to the people. You can't
You
travel
can't.
through these tourist groups that go through. They don't meet anyone.
No.
You got to stay there and work and understand them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interpersonals with people, isn't it?
Yeah.
yeah. We went to Kayleys and all. You know what a Kaylee is.
Yes,
you
the
know.
singing and dancing.
Yeah, we went to them and told stories and told them about what we're talking about now.
Yes.
You
Just
just
growing up in
growing
Reefton.
up. Yeah.
And they love it, don't they?
They love it, and they remember you for years later.
Yeah.
Remember when you told us this?
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
Especially being twins era, you'd stand out like.
Dog's balls. yeah.
Well, yes, I pulled up from that.
We're on the plane going over, and we got talking to a couple of people sitting behind us,
Mm.
and they're from Taranaki or somewhere. And once we got to Glasgow, they disappeared. But anyway, a few weeks later, we were in Inverness,
Mm.
and we were walking down the road, and there was 2 people on bikes come behind us. Hey, the boys from New Zealand, McKay boys. We said, yeah. They said, we recognised your legs.
Ah, wow.
Back on because we had shorts on. Yeah.
Yes.
And when we went over on the plane, there was us 2 Mackays. There was Simon Murray, who we didn't know then. He lives out the road
Yes.
on the farm up Cannons Road now.
Yes.
Simon. There was 2 Mackays and Murray. Oh, they were all the exact same number of us that were in a poem called the Mui Martyrs
Mm.
that staged a protest against the landlords
Yes.
to get some of the land they thought rightly belonged to them. And it was the same number of us
Yeah.
going over and same names, yeah,
There
on
you
the
go.
plane. Just strange how it works out.
Coincidences all round, isn't it?
Yeah, and we didn't know Simon Murray then, but we met him and spoke to him, and then met him here, and he lives here. Yeah, we get on good with him.
You do, he's a hard shot, all right. The story you told me was about the archaeology there that piqued your interest.
Yeah, well, our hobby around here would be digging old bottles at gold mine sites of old gold mining houses and all that. And when we're over there, we got asked to go on a dig at a place called Kilfedder, which is on back road. I think it's the River Bora coming through there somewhere. And we went across and we ended up digging these little pieces and finding out that where the old stone granite querns they used for grinding the corn and that up.
Yes.
Found 2 or 3 big broken ones of them under the ground.
Yes.
And bits and pieces of iron. They were making their own iron in them days.
Splash.
And stuff called splash glazed pottery.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And they'd found little shards of it. And when we were up there, helping a chap go through another relative shed looking for some other farming implement thing, and here was an old one that obviously one of these McKays had dug up, and it was a complete splash glazed pottery vase.
Terracotta on the outside.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we told them about it and told the relatives that it was in a shed, but they reckon they couldn't find it, so I'm going to find it. But yeah, well, great on that dig. And anyway, on that dig, the chap running it, he was a joker, Nick Lindsay, and he runs a magazine, and we end up in that magazine all that year. And
McDonald, is it? You're telling me about John McDonald then?
Well, he was the local historian, and he was writing a book or getting a lot of info ready to put into a book on the life of the shepherds around that way after the clearances of the people. The sheep came in, the Cheviot sheep and that, and we would go with him to some of these abandoned stone old houses on some of the sites where they lived before they were cleared, and we were picking up later model bottles and jars and bits and pieces that are just left there, still there from those days, and you could wander around in the tussocky hillsides and find this stuff.
Yes. And
Well,
you
yes.
come across them here in New Zealand too, those bottles? Or
Yes,
big-
we come across a lot of whiskey bottles, the black whiskey bottles here, and we found the same type of glass up in places called Aber's Cross, up in the hills above Rogart, where John McDonald's ancestors have been, and they were caught making whiskey by the excise people and finding that, and we actually found bits of their broken whiskey bottles up there digging around, so it was quite interesting.
Now, well, that makes your travels much more interesting when you're right in there and amongst all that stuff, doesn't it? Eh?
Oh
Yeah, and we still kept up with their stalking practices of deer,
Yes.
and they had red deer, sika deer, and roe deer, the little fella, and we could get within 3 metres of the little roe deer, and 7 metres consistently of the red deer, and about the same for sika. And when they spotted us there, so close to them, the red deer would run the furthest.
Yes.
He'd put his head down and go for miles.
Yes.
The sika deer would just go over the hill somewhere, and the wee roe deer, he'd only go round the corner
Right.
and sit down. So you could stalk him over and over again. It was good practice,
Yes.
laying on your guts in the frost.
Summertime,
Yeah.
frost in
Yeah.
the morning.
It's a harsh climate up there.
Oh, the weather deteriorated. It started off, we would always get up at 6 and go for a wander around the hills, and it'd be fine till 9 o'clock, and then the rain would come in.
Yes.
But people around there never got up till 10, so they never saw the fine bits.
Did you do photography as well to record all your travels?
Yeah, we
Yes.
did do quite a bit of photography.
And we were in the Outer Hebrides one day, and we were just reading a paper on the table, on the breakfast table, and it showed a rare bird that they'd never seen before in the Outer Hebrides. I think it come from Africa or somewhere.
Yeah,
A
a finch called a
serum,
serum.
C-E-R, IN. And there's a nice photo there. And I just looked out the window and here he was.
No.
So I got a better photo than they got.
Yeah, so they seen it a fortnight earlier,
Yes.
and they were 10 miles away from where we were.
Yes.
So in that fortnight it had come right to where we were and
Wow.
stuff. So we've got the page out of the paper here
It's in there.
and our photo and that with it.
And so that was like a shorebird or a bigger bird for inland?
No,
No,
he's,
they're more like the size of a sparrow
Oh, yes.
type
Yeah.
bird, but they'd flown from Africa and
Yes.
didn't get them up in that neck of the
but we
woods.
did get a lot of rare ones. And even the people that have spent all their life on their crofts, you'd hear the cuckoos,
Yes.
and not one of them had ever been sighted by them.
Oh, I
They'd
see.
never seen any. Well, we got good photos of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because of your bush skills and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
get them photos.
Oh, we got buzzards sitting on eggs, big eagles, bloody everything. We'd have seen a crake.
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
we just couldn't seem to see one. They're in the bloody in the stinging nettle and that
Yeah.
shit.
and the wild iris, and they were in these patches, swampy patches. You could hear them calling, but they're just sneaking in underneath. And
Wow.
he'd been there all his life, and he got one going along. There's one mating in the ditch
Oh, wow.
beside him, so he got a photo of that.
Mm.
Yeah,
Now, bird photography is quite an art, but you've got to have your camera with you to do it, don't you?
Oh,
got to have
Ready.
it all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
And be switched on and know where the light's up to and everything.
what they call the bird watchers and that, they call them twitchers
Twitches, yes.
over there. Yeah. They are bottle collecting, to get back to that. Was what we dug up here, and we would sell through the eyesight, the more common Goldfields glass,
Yes.
and buy whiskey, decent whiskey stuff from these auctions and that.
Yes.
And that's the basis of our whiskey collection of memorabilia and bottles and jugs and all that, which we're probably going to put into the distillery. And that's what started off.
Yes.
The distillery here was us talking to Patsy Bass about our collection, and that started the distillery. That's why we're sort of involved in the distillery.
That's going from strength to strength, isn't it?
Oh, isn't it ever?
Lovely.
Yeah,
Great thing.
yeah.
All right, boys. Well, I'll wrap her up now, and thanks
Yep.
very much for going over that. And I've held you up. I'll let you get back to your pile of wood there.
Oh
We're
no, we're
finished.
finished. We're going in for crib shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah.